Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on Android with Kenji NX. Now, we talked about Kenji NX just the other day in regards to a brand new release, but we didn't talk about the Android version. And the Android version of Kenji NX, which is a Nintendo Switch emulator forker for Ujinx, just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Kenji NX Android version 2.0.5 is the latest update. And this update has a bunch of fixes and brand new features here. If we take a look under new features, they say stretch to full screen toggle, and that's in settings and graphics. Added 0.75 times resolution setting. L3, R3 support for physical controllers. And on top of that, for the virtual controller or the touchpad, they've added in separate L3 and R3 buttons. They've added in language and region selection, screen orientation preferences, which is in settings and user interface, and position and opacity settings for the overlay menu button. And on top of all of that, they've added in something here that's very interesting, Android 10 support, although they say it's experimental. I'm assuming devices running Android 10 are probably going to have a pretty tough time trying to emulate the Nintendo Switch. And speaking about emulation updates, but going back one generation here and talking about Nintendo 3DS emulation with Azahar. And Azahar just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Azahar version 21.23.3 is the latest update. And they say here it primarily addresses issues experienced by users while using dual-screen Android devices. Additionally, minor changes were made to improve platform support. So under Android here, they say various improvements to secondary display handling. And they've also fixed an issue where if a secondary screen was disconnected during emulation while using the Vulkan renderer, the emulator would still attempt to use the disconnected screen, causing various issues. And now that's been fixed. Next up, we're still talking about emulators, but switching from Nintendo to Sony and talking about PlayStation 2 emulation with a brand new PlayStation 2 emulator that's just hit Google Play. And that is PSX2. So taking a look here on the Google Play Store, and well, this one in Canada at the very least is $6.99. And in my opinion here, that immediately raises a red flag. Now in the description of this one, if I take a look here and scroll down, it says it is open source and based on the renowned PSX2 project, PSX2 and PSX2 ARM64. So it sounds very similar to something like ARM-SX2. So taking a look at their GitHub, and everything seems to be right up on here, and they even say that this project is specifically forked from PSX2 ARM64 to provide optimized performance on ARM64 Android devices. And even more interestingly here, right on their GitHub, the latest release is PSX2 Free. They say this is PSX2 for free, and you can read the README for details on this PS2 emulator. So it appears that the paid version is a Google Play Store exclusive, where the free version is probably the exact same thing, just on GitHub. So absolutely no surprise here, there's a little bit of drama surrounding this project. Heading on over to the ARM-SX2 Discord, and these people say that this emulator is being sold at $5 a pop for what is basically a non-functional early proof of concept of Pontos' original PSX2 port to Android, the same source material that we originally built this entire project around. However, this emulator was developed through Vibe Coding, aka ChatGPT cooked up a UI and they shipped out the barebones PSX2 port with a price tag. They then go on to say here how we'd like to warn you to not fall for this trap and send this developer money. This is not the first time they have practiced scam tactics to make a quick buck off the fans of emulation and the FOSS community. It's a shame that I even have to make this announcement, as I'd assume people releasing PS2 or any emulators would do it for the love of emulation, and not for the love of their own pockets. So heading on over to Reddit emulation on Android, and it seems the developer of PSX2 has responded. And they say here, and I gotta scroll down just a little bit, there's quite a bit of text. They say here, this is false information, thanks for spreading it. I want to get something to eat and I come back to this. I admitted to using AI, but not for the whole app, and there are many changes. A personal grudge held against me by the developers of ARMSX2, which still does not have a source code or release in sight. While my app is compliant to the license and all sources open, it's amazing how much hate I've gotten for charging $5 for this app that I've been working on for months and months before the ARMSX2 team started. I'm sorry for all the pain I caused for trying to make a living besides my day job. I'm going to continue working on this app and other projects no matter what the haters may say. I'm waiting on a review of an update for the issue on some devices that can't move past adding the BIOS. I've been accused of stealing code from code that is still not released. I have linked to the open source code that I used and am allowed to monetize it according to the license. That being said, I'll look into adding a free build on my GitHub page even though I have easy to build instructions, and we already just took a look at that. Overall here, this is super weird. There's a couple of things that I think seem to be a little bit misunderstood here. Based on this response, I didn't see the ARMSX2 accusing them of stealing any code at all, just using an early build and it was non-functional. I didn't see any accusations of stealing code unless I missed something. So I'm not quite sure as what's going on here. I don't know the relationship between this person and the ARMSX2 team or really any of that. But they are using AI and they are charging on the Google Play Store, and they do have a free version. So just to double check things, I'm back on the ARMSX2 Discord and I don't see any accusations of stolen code. I see this emulator is being sold at $5 a pop for what is basically a non-functional early proof of concept of Pontos' original PSX2 port to Android. But I don't see anywhere where they say stolen code. So overall here, whatever's happening behind the scenes, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, the ARMSX2 team appears to be warning people just not to purchase this from the Google Play Store because one, it's made with AI and maybe not necessarily a great version of the emulator. And number two, it should be open source and free considering it's based on free and open source code. And the developer has responded by releasing a free version of it overall. And then also accusing the ARMSX2 team of accusing them of using stolen code, which is not true. And continuing to talk about PlayStation 2 emulation and ARMSX2. Next up, we're talking about ARMSX2 and also something else. So the other day we talked about how one of the developers working on ARMSX2 left the project. Well, it turns out there's an announcement here, and they didn't leave the project out of any sort of bad blood whatsoever. In fact, they're still on very good terms with ARMSX2. They say here, though, Stern is the person who left. The cat's out of the bag. I am working on my own PSX2 fork for Android, which is based on the ARMSX2 branch I have been working on. Furthermore, they say here, with this plan in mind, I still plan to contribute my changes to ARMSX2 once it's open source. So I would say maybe everybody wins in this situation. I think Stern had a differing of opinion on how to develop the emulator, and instead of letting that come between the developers, they just went off and did their own thing. I don't really see a problem with that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I am curious to know what that other emulator is going to be named. I would suggest Leg SX2, but let me know your thoughts on that. But moving on from that, and next up we're still talking about emulation, but this time with, I might mispronounce this one, Subscribe to Mr. Sujano or Arkadyzja, depending on how you wanted to pronounce that. I still might have mispronounced it. Anyways, Arkadyzja has a brand new update. Now, for those who may be unaware, they say here, play your favorite PlayStation, Dreamcast, and arcade retro games online with rollback up to 4 players using Arkadyzja, a matchmaking front end for DuckStation NetPlay, Flycast Dojo, MAME, and FB Neo via custom retro GGPO front end. So at the time of filming, version 0.0.28 is the latest update, and this is a pre-release, so there may be bugs and issues with it. They say Retro Buddha has been added, so MAME and FB Neo support. They've also added in private sessions and small UI changes. And speaking about new stuff, next up we're talking about Audacity. And if you're a fan of Audacity, you might be excited to know that Audacity 4 is set to release in 2026. And there's a brand new video that's almost an hour long, 52 minutes and 46 seconds to be specific, talking about the huge updates to this program. If you are interested in Audacity, if you work with it, I would recommend checking out the video to learn exactly what's changing. I mean, this thing, in my opinion, is being completely revamped. And not just the logo, although the logo has received a bit of criticism. I really could care less about the logo, and I'm more interested in the program and what it does overall. And I would say one of the most interesting things in this video is that the developers convinced StaffPad to open source some proprietary software. However, if you are still really interested in the logo, they do have a section in that video talking about the redesign and how they arrived at it. Next up, we're shifting away from audio and talking about Opera. And, well, you may still think I'm talking about audio if you're not familiar with Opera Browser. Anyways, we're talking about Opera Browser, and I'm really curious as to the overall adoption number, the sales numbers for this stuff, because it's being reported that Opera has started inviting early adopters to get into a founder version of their upcoming AI browser, Neon, and it's $60 for 9 months of subscription. And then it bumps up to, after 9 months, it's $19.90 per month. Now, I'm not going to lie here. I am really curious to hear your thoughts on the matter on Opera Neon just in general. I, for one, have little to no interest to use something like Opera Neon, but if you're an early adopter, let me know your thoughts about it and your experiences about it in the comments below. And speaking about opinions on things, next up we're talking about Nintendo and Pokémon versus Palworld. Now, we talked about this one in the past when Nintendo said mods don't count as prior art as they're not full games. And this is in relation to that lawsuit where Palworld said there is a prior art argument and Nintendo's patents are basically invalid. Anyways, here, there's an attorney who has weighed in with some very interesting verbiage. So listen to this headline over on Games Radar. Nintendo is so wrong it hurts. US IP expert says Nintendo claiming mods don't invalidate its Pokémon patents is just a loser argument and a Hail Mary in its ongoing legal fight with Palworld. Furthermore, the article goes on to quote the video, which we'll get to in just a second, but here are some quotes from the article. But in general, I think that this argument is a loser. It's one that is fixated too highly on form over function, which is just a bad idea. Because where do we end that dispute, right? There are plenty of Unreal Engine 5 games. Are those mods too because they're running on a singular engine? So from my perspective, it's just a loser argument from Nintendo. I think that they're trying to throw a Hail Mary because there's so much out there. Furthermore, I think deep down inside they know these patents are junk. They don't want them to be invalidated. They don't want a bad mark on the record. But mods, that gets into this weird definitional case. I would never make that argument in a million years. I recommend checking out this Games Radar article for more information. And furthermore, if you wanted to watch the video where these quotes are coming from, again, like everything we talk about, link will be within the GitHub link in the description below. So anyways, here, this video is titled Owning Game Mechanics, Making Sense of Nintendo Patents with Kirk Sigmund, who is an attorney at Banner Witkoff. And this video surprisingly only has 223 views. But moving on from that and arguably still talking about something relatively controversial, next up we're switching from Nintendo to Xbox and talking about the Game Pass price increases. Well, it seems as if Game Pass Ultimate price increases are not unanimous across the board if you already have a Game Pass Ultimate subscription. Now, information on this one seems to be inconsistent, but anyways, the reporting here is up on The Verge, and I think they do a really good job of trying to piece everything together. But I guess Microsoft is holding off on its Xbox Game Pass price hikes for some existing subscribers in select countries. Like Germany, Ireland, South Korea, Poland, and India. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if it's just restricted to these companies or if more will surface up as time goes on. We'll have to wait and see if there are more reports of prices not going up in certain areas. From my understanding as well, based on the article, unless I'm misunderstanding something, it's not impacting subscribers in the US or the UK. So resubscriptions, if I'm not mistaken, are going to be at the higher price point in the US and the UK, and ultimately also in Canada, where I am. Now, I don't know about you, but I can tell you my resubscription price is $0 because I'm not resubscribing. But moving on from things that have subscription fees to things that don't have subscription fees. And next up, we're talking about PC gaming and Steam. And Proton Experimental has a brand new update here that makes even more games playable, and there's also a bunch of fixes. So under now playable with the latest version of Proton Experimental is Surgeon Simulator, also Changeling VR, and Summoner's War Rush. As for the fixes here, if you've got a Steam Deck, you might be excited about this. So they fixed Sony controllers not working in God of War Ragnarok on Steam Deck in handheld mode. Fixed The Quarry not being playable on OLED Steam Decks, and fixed HDR in Far Cry 5 on OLED Steam Decks. If you don't have a Steam Deck, they fixed For Honor not starting on non-Steam Decks. But moving on from Steam and Proton and Linux to Windows and talking about Windows 11, and there's some upcoming Windows 11 changes that people may not necessarily be excited about. Listen to this headline over on Android Headlines. Windows 11 local account crackdown. Microsoft account may soon be mandatory. For more information, I would recommend checking out the article. They say Microsoft is removing known workarounds for local account creation in Windows 11 setup, effectively making a Microsoft account mandatory for most users. The company cites proper configuration, but the move signals a continued push for data collection and service integration, limiting user choice in device setup. The change is still pending to reach the stable channel, but is being tested in recent dev and beta builds. Furthermore, taking a look at Tom's Hardware, and they're reporting a very similar thing, and they're saying here that skipping Microsoft account sign-in will crash the setup process. Now, Tom's Hardware does state there are some ways to get around this, like running a script-based unattended installation, but not everyone will be aware or comfortable doing that. Really interesting overall. I'm also wondering too if anti-cheat starts working with Linux a little bit better and it's a little bit more friendly for a lot of the different types of anti-cheats. If that'll also start swaying gamers to using Linux more. Let me know your thoughts. And speaking about gamers and games, next up here we're talking about Crimson Desert. And if you're excited about this upcoming title, you may want to check out a video here on IGN. It's titled Crimson Desert. 11 minutes of brand new gameplay. Now, I would say the game itself is shaping up really good. The visuals look good, the combat looks relatively smooth, and I think this game will be a hit. I mean, take a look at some of these comments. This person says, even if it'll have its flaws, you just have to appreciate the amount of work devs put into this behemoth. And this person here, I can't get my head around how massive this game is. And speaking about game announcements, and this one's a little bit more niche. Next up, we're talking about Broken Sword. And Broken Sword, the Smoking Mirror Reforged, has just been announced. The game's already listed on Steam, and it says coming early 2026, although we don't have a specific release date just yet, and we don't have a price just yet. And taking a look at the previous Reforged game, and it's got an overwhelmingly positive review score. And speaking about niche stuff, last up here we're talking about Nintendo, and Nintendo released a brand new trailer called Close to You. I don't know if it's a trailer or short film. It's 3 minutes and 54 seconds, and comments have been disabled on this. I'll link it in the description below so you can check it out yourself. There's a baby and a pacifier and some animation. There has been some speculation as to what this really means overall. Is this going to be a new movie, a short, a new type of game, or maybe it's a trailer for Pikmin, a teaser for Pikmin, or something like that? Let me know what you think it might be in the comments below, or if you just think it's a closer to you trailer, just something different from Nintendo. Who knows? But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.